Oh, perfect. Thank you. Okay, we are on 52b, Nun Beis Amud Beis, continuing the exciting death penalties. The mission we had yesterday was all about Neheragin, was about getting killed by the sword. So we're going to go from there to the strangulation one, and then get involved in everyone who gets stoned, all 15 or 18 people, and that'll take us for a while. So here we go. The Gemara says, Tanya, the Brisa says, Amar Len Rabbi Yehuda l'Chachamim. Rabbi Yehuda said to the Chachamim. Remember, in the Mishnah it said that there is a machlokas on how you get killed by the sword. Do you get the head chopped off and then you fall down? To that, Rabbi Yehuda said that's a little bit that's not proper. Rather, lie him down and then cut it off. That the rabbi said that's not proper. So Tanya, Amar Lahan Rabbi Yehuda l'Chachamim. Rabbi Yehuda told the Chachamim, Af ani yodeya shemisa minuvelasi. So even I know that the death is minuvelas, meaning it's disgusting, it's not proper, it's disgraceful to the person. Aval ma'asa, what should I do? Shaharei amra Torah ubechuko seyem lo seilechu. Rabbi Yehuda's of the opinion. Good morning, Jules. Rabbi Yehuda's of the opinion that you lay the person down and then cut off his head. And he says, I also know that, and the rabbis told him that's a very disgraceful way to die, to get killed. He says, I know, but what can I do? That I have no other way to do it. If I kill him standing up, that's going to go right in the face of the rule of ubichuko sehem lo seilechu. You're not allowed to go in the ways of the non-Jews. When the non-Jews are doing certain things, you're not allowed to follow their ways. It's a very serious prohibition. So therefore, I can't kill him standing up. I have to kill him lying down, even though it's a disgraceful death. But what am I supposed to do? The Torah says I can't follow in the ways of the non-Jews. Okay, so what do the rabbis hold? V'Rabbanan kevan dechsiv sayif be'araisa. The Rabbanan say it says sword, being killed by the sword in the Torah. So lo minayu kagamrinan. So then I learn from there. Sounds like the rabbis are saying even though there's the non-Jews kill people a certain way, at the end of the day, the Torah still tells me that I have to do this. And therefore, even though it's one of the ways of the non-Jews, but at the end of the day, the Torah says to do it. So the interesting discussion that like how far do you take this when you have a conflict between the non-Jews statutes by their rules, their ways that they do, and the Torah tells you something that seems now, like let's say they copied us in something, and the Torah says to do it, and yet the non-Jews also do it. How do you reconcile those two? So this is an interesting source for that. So now the rabbis say the Gemara says if you don't say that even when the non-Jews are doing certain things, but at the end of the day, our Torah says to do it, so you have to do it. If you don't say that, so then what's going to be with the following brisa? There's a very interesting halacha that after the king dies, you burn his stuff so that people don't use it. You don't want people to, so you burn up the king's stuff, his bed, his belongings. So it says, sorfan ala malachim, you burn up the king's possessions. V'lo midarchei amori, and it's no problem of following the ways of the non-Jews. So it says, "V'lo midarchei amori heicha sorfinan, v'haksiv ubechuko seim lo seilechu." This is what the non-Jews do. They burn their king's stuff after the king dies, and yet we're also commanded to do that. How do you reconcile that? Isn't that following the ways of the non-Jews, and that is not allowed? So, Ella, what are you going to say? Kevan diksiv sreifa b'araisa. Since the Torah says sreifa, and here we're quoting a pasuk from Nach, from Yirmiyahu, u'b'misrofos avosecha v'gomer, about burning u'b'misrofos avosecha hamelachim harishonim. The pasuk says you should burn their things. So lav minayu kagamrin. Don't we learn from there that even though the non-Jews might do this, but at the end of the day, the Torah says do it, so you do it. So to here, the Rabbanan say it says sword in the Torah. You kill a guy by the sword. So even though the non-Jews also do this, their kings also kill people by the sword. But it doesn't matter. At the end of the Torah told us to do that, and therefore that's what we do. Labinak kagamrinon. Okay. What's that? We are 52b. I don't know in the article.
2b2.
52b2.
And almost at the end of the first column.
52b2. Yeah. So, okay. The Haditran, it says in Haditran Idach Pirkin, it says coming up in a few weeks, Elu Hein HaNeheragim. The following people get killed by the sword. Harotzeach, one who kills somebody else, a murderer. The Anshe Ir Hanidachas, and the people of the wayward city that all went off and did avodah zarah. Now, Bishlama Ir Nidachas Ksibahu Lefi Charev. When it comes to Ir Nidachas, I understand that very well. It says Lefi Charev, by the sword, you'll get killed by the sword. Ela Rotzeach Minolan. How do you know that a murderer gets killed by the sword? The Tanya, as it says in Shmos, it says V'chiyake Ishas Avdo. It's talking about a person as a Jewish servant, and he hits him enough of a hit that it kills him. So it says Nakom, Nakomi Nakem. You should surely avenge him. Sounds like the way he killed him, he gets killed. So says the Gemara, Nikimazu Enidei Mahu. What is avenge? Avenge him in what way? Kishihu Omer vehevesi aleichem cherev. When it says in Vayikra, you should bring a sword. No kemes nekam bris. Have Omer nukima zu saif. I found another place that talks about avenging, and there it has a sword. So to here, by killing your servant, the avenging means through the means of a sword. Says the Gemara of Ema de Brisle Mivraz. Maybe it doesn't mean you kill him by the sword. You sort of poke him with the sword. You make, now you cut off his head, but maybe you poke through his body. It says Lefi Charev Ksiv. So, but it sounds like Lefi Charev, according to the sword, means that you don't poke him, rather you by the edge of the sword. Yeah, thank you. Right, by the edge of the sword, and therefore what? And therefore the whole head has to come off.
This indicates slicing.
Oh, slicing has to go from one end to the other.
Like a balloon.
Jules, I'm worried if you're going to be killing someone with a sword, you're going to be laughing the whole time. I don't know. So Lefi Charev. The aim of the Avidle Gistra. Maybe you cut his body in half. You slice his body in half. Not bad, right? Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav Barbu, our favorite loving pasuk. Amar Kra v'hafta recha kamocha barlo misa yafarev. One thing comes out of this whole parak is that love your neighbor means kill him in the nicest way possible. So, yeah, make it easy on him. So, and therefore you don't cut his body in half. You just cut off his head. Now, says the Gemara, this is all very good by killing your servant. Eshkan katal avdo bar chorin minolan. How do you know that if you kill a regular free man, that you also get killed by the sword? V'lav kal v'chomer. Is it not a kal v'chomer? Katal avda b'sayif bar chorin b'chenek. You kill someone with a sword who's your servant, and someone who's not your servant, he's going to get a lesser punishment of chenek. Can't be, must be. He must get at least the same punishment of sayif. Says the Gemara, that's very nice. If chenek, strangulation, is more lenient, then it's not going to make sense that a free man should be more lenient of a punishment than your own servant. But so therefore it has to be the same, at least the same. So they'll both get the sword. But chenek chamor, Rabbi Shimon, if you hold strangulation is more strict than sayif, then you have no kal v'chomer. So Michael Amemar, how do you know that therefore a free man gets killed by the sword and not through strangulation? Maybe he should get strangulation because strangulation is more stringent than getting killed by the sword. So Michael Amemar, nafkalei midetanya. It says in Devarim by Egla Arufa. We know that when a corpse is found between two cities and you don't know who it is, so there's a whole procedure there. And you bring a cow and you slice the back of its neck. So hukshu kol shovchei damim legu egla rufa. Interesting. All killers are compared to a egla rufa, to the parish of egla rufa, to the cow. Malahalan b'sayif. Just like there, when we find the corpse, we don't know who it is. The procedure is you take a cow and you slice the back of its neck. So too, any killer will have the same fate. Malaholan b'sayif umin hatzavar, from the neck, avkan b'sayif umin hatzavar. Says the Gemara, imalaholan bekofetz umimul oref. Just like by the cow, you use the knife. Umimul oref, I think it's from the back, right? The back of the head. You cut the back of the cow's neck. Maybe here too. Afkan bekofetz umimul oref. What is that?
With an axe
From the back. So maybe so too by this person. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav Barbu, Amar Kra, behaftarech kamocha, barlo misa yafa. You should choose the nicest of the punishments, which is interesting. Apparently here it's nicer to get killed, get your head chopped off from the front than from the back. Why is that true? I'm not sure.
Oh, probably because it gets you.
Oh, the veins,
Or yeah.
like shchita, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, shchita you don't kill from the back. Meaning the windpipes are in the front,
Right.
a person will die faster. Oh,
Main artery.
the main arteries. Okay, yeah,
Artery.
good. Thank you. That makes sense now. Okay, so last one of the four. Mitzvahs hanechnokin, strangulation, which we already saw is basically the same thing as streifa, except for here you pull it all the way, there you wait till the last moment and throw lead down. Okay, mitzvahs hanechnokin, you mashkino. So, someone pointed out last night an amazing thing. You kill somebody, you get killed by the sword, a lesser punishment. You do one of the 30, you tie a permanent knot on Shabbos, the potential is to get stoned. Think of that. It's an amazing. We don't think in that way, right? We think of murderers. It's just amazing how Hashem thinks about things. How it's Shabbos.
How does he think?
Apparently, a permanent knot, and
Yeah.
or any other of the 39 prohibitions.
Right.
In the event that you have witnesses and you say I'm going to do it anyways, whatever. But you see that a permanent knot, right? Worse than, and a life is the most sacred thing in Judaism. It's just very interesting. Yeah. Mitzvahs hanechnokin hayu mashkin oso bezevel. So strangulation, you put him down into the manure, into the dirt, so that he can't move, not to the left, not to the right, until his knees. And you put the hard handkerchief within a soft handkerchief, and you wrap it around his neck. Two of the witnesses, they each pull in each direction, ad shenafsho yotzes, until his soul leaves him, until he dies. Yeah, that's a good reaction. Okay, so just like that. Oof, yeah. So Taner Rabbanan, hopefully it goes that fast. Okay, Taner Rabbanan. It says by a person who had relations when he wasn't supposed to. He illicit relations. It says the ish asher yinaf as eishes re'ehu, and a man who has illicit relations with the wife eishes ish of another man. So so now let's see. Ish, it's only a man, prat lekatan. So we know that, a 9-year-old could get married, right? Mm-hmm. So, but if he gets married and then has illicit relations, he's not going to have the same punishment as if someone over bar mitzvah has illicit relations. Asher yinaf as eishes ish. Now this man has relations with someone else's wife, prat le'eishes katan, coming to exclude the wife of a katan. So if she's married to a katan, it's also going to be a different punishment. Won't be as strict as this. So the man having the relations has to be over 13, and the lady has to be married to somebody over 13. I assume you're not off scot-free, but you won't get killed, it sounds like. Eishes re'ehu, prat le'eishes acherim. So now she has to be the wife of re'ehu, like after the re'ach hakamocha, someone from the tribe. Prat le'eishes acherim, but if she's married to a non-Jew, so then you're also not going to get killed. Now this is interesting. So what's the prohibition? What's the prohibition of marrying a non-Jew? Right? So it's not like so explicit. So here's at least one source. Tosfos says, it sounds from here, that there's this commandment of do not have relations with somebody who's already married. That whole thing doesn't apply to someone who's married to a non-Jew. However, Tosfos does say, we know there's a whole thing called Eishes Yifas Toar, and you meet the lady in battle, the pretty lady, you could take her home, a whole thing. So there he says, from the fact that we allowed you to take her, sounds like every other non-Jewish lady, it's going to be not allowed. That's just, I think it's a whole machlokes showing what the source is. It's really not it's definitely usher, but it's not so clear what the source is. So this is just interesting. One source comes up here. Yeah. So Okay, Pral Eish Lechem. So this lady has to be married to somebody from the tribe. So most yumas, it says most yumas, you shall surely be killed. What does that mean? Bechenek, strangulation. It says the Gemara, Ata Omer bechenek ve'en ela b'achas b'kol mitzvah samuros b'Torah. You're saying strangulation. Maybe it refers to some other death penalty. It just says you should surely be killed. What's be killed? We have four options. So how do you know it's referring to strangulation? So says the Gemara, Amris kol makom shemer misa b'Torah stam. It's very interesting. Whenever you go through the psukim in the Torah, and it just says you should surely be killed, what is that referring to? Says the first opinion over here. It's referring to the most lenient punishment. Ein ata rishai l'moksha l'hachmi aleha, ela l'hakil aleha. Divrei Rabbi Yoshia. Rabbi Yoshia says, since it's ambiguous, you have to choose the least strict punishment, the most lenient punishment, and you have no right to be more strict. The same way, like the minimum of a plural is going to be 2, and you have no right to make it 3, right? So to here, the when it says you should surely be killed, it's at least referring to the lowest form punishment, and you have no right to give a person a punishment that they don't deserve. Okay, that's Rabbi Yoshia. Says Rabbi Yonasan Omer Lo Mipnei Shehi Kala. It's not because it's the most lenient punishment. That's not why. Rather, the following: Ella kol misa amura b'Torah stam ein ala chenek. Okay, he doesn't explain himself. He says it's not because it's the most lenient punishment. Maybe it's not the most lenient punishment. We know that's machlokas Rabbi Shimon HaChachamim. Is strangulation the most lenient, or it's number 3, not number 4 from the most lenient? So what did Rabbi Yonasan mean? Why does every misa in the Torah, every time it just says misa, death, it refers to chenek? Why? Rabbi Omer, because like this. It says numerous times death in the Torah, and it's referring to death, heavenly death, misa b'dei shemayim. And it says numerous times in the Torah death referring to capital punishment. So we compare the two. Nemar misa b'dei shemayim, nemar misa b'dei adam. Ma misa more b'dei shemayim, misa she'ein bo roshem, just like a heavenly punishment leaves no mark. Af misa ha'amura b'dei adam, misa she'ein bo roshem. It also can't leave a mark. So cutting off with the sword leaves the least mark versus, I guess, stoning leaves a mark. I mean, the body's there. Burning leaves a mark. The body's there. And, sorry, not cutting off with that. Strangulation. Strangulation leaves no mark. And cutting off that also. This leaves no mark. You just pull the handkerchief and then the body's still intact. So no, yeah. So that's a similarity between these two punishments. So says the Gemara, Ve'ema Sreifa. Okay, but maybe it's referring to Sreifa. How do you know? Maybe it should be referring to Sreifa. It's an interesting question. I mean, I guess Sreifa is from the inside, right? So that also could leave no mark. It goes from the inside. So you have 2 of the punishments leave no mark. So maybe it should be Sreifa. Says the Gemara, our favorite parsha, Midamar Rachmana Bas Kohen B'Sreifa Michal the Ha'al Lav Bas Sreifa. Since the Torah singles out the daughter of a Kohen and says that she gets burnt, so that shows you that everyone else does not get burnt since she's singled out. So now, 2 opinions. Rabbi Yoshia says because chenek is the most lenient, and Rabbi Yonasan says because we compare it to a deathly punishment, which is also often referred to ambiguously in the Torah, and therefore they both leave no mark. Now, Bishlama Rabbi Yonasan, according to Rabbi Yonasan, who Rebbe just explained, is referring to a punishment that leaves no mark, could become a farish Rebbe Taima. But Ela Rabbi Yoshia, according to Rabbi Yoshia, Mimai dika chenek ba'olam. How do you know there's even such a thing called strangulation? You told me it must be the least of the punishments, but you didn't tell me where do we even know that chenek exists. So at least according to the other opinion, it's the one that leaves no mark. So we put our heads together, we figure out, okay, chenek leaves no mark. Says so a masayif, maybe it'll be referring to killing by the sword. Says the Gemara, no. Amarava arba misos, Gemara gemiri lahu. The 4 misos are a halacha Moshe Sinai. We have a tradition of these 4. That's how we know it's chenek.
Get out of jail free card.
Yeah, right. So yeah, it is good. Yeah, that's true. Right, it's hard to know. Is it like it must be halacha Moshe Sinai, or it's more definitive? Yeah, I don't know. So It's definitely definitive because it says it, but yeah. Okay. Now, so this machlokes, Rabbi Yonas and Rabbi Yoshia, what's behind their argument? Where are they coming from? Simplest understanding is Rabbi Yoshia said it was the most lenient punishment. Rabbi Yonasan couldn't say that because he held it wasn't the most lenient punishment. That's reflecting the two opinions of Beplukta, Rabbi Shimon and Rabbanan. They argue in the machlokas of Rabbi Shimon and Rabbanan. Is strangulation the lowest form of punishment, or is killing by the sword the lowest form of punishment? If you hold strangulation is, then you have an answer that when the Torah says misa, it's referring to that. If you argue on that, you have to come up with some other reason, and therefore he tells you that it's compared to misa bidei shamayim. Amar le Rabbi Zer Abaye. So now, Amar le Rabbi Zer Abaye. Rabbi Zer tells Abaye, Shar haniskal. We're going to see. There's going to be a Mishnah coming up very soon with 15 or 18 people that get stoned. Now, Shar haniskal deloksivu skila. Not all of them does it say you get stoned. So how do you know that you get stoned? So the gmiri me'ov v'yidoni. Two kinds of avodah zara, of sorcery. One is called ov and one is called yidoni. So we learn from them. Just like it says skila there, then these people get skila also. Says the Gemara, hold on. B'mai gmiri. With what mechanism are you learning all these stoners, all these people who get stoned from Ovi Yidoni? That's a stone, yeah. So there's going to be two options. It says in the Torah, Mos Yumas, or Mos Yumsu, you shall surely be killed. It also has a phraseology, Demehem Bum, you should take their blood. So you can, are you learning it from B'mai Gmiri, B'mos Yumsu Gmiri, or B'demehem Bum Gmiri? Which one are you using to teach you that the rest of the people that get stoned get stoned? So, Amarle b'demehem. So Rabbi Abaye told Rabbi Zera b'demehem. Demehem bam gmiri. We learn out from the phraseology of that you should take their blood. If they do one of these acts, you take their blood. It says take their blood by Oviadoni, by the sorcery, and then you get stoned. So to here you get stoned. So why are you so convinced that that's true? The I b'mos yumsu. If you're going to tell me you should learn it from the other phraseology of mos yumsu, he should surely be killed, Gmiri. Then what are you going to do with Demayam Gmiri? So then Demayam Lamali. What do you use Demayam for? Then that verse is extra. What do you need it for? So must be Elamai b'Demayam Gmiri. But if that's true, then what do you need the other phraseology for? Mos Yumsu Lamali. So you have these two phraseologies, both referring to a guy getting killed. You should surely be killed, or you should take his blood. So how do you know to choose one over the other? They seem to one of them has to be extra. Oh, so here we go. And this is why we brought it in, because it's relevant to what we just spoke about a minute ago. Kedetanya, as the Brisa says, Mos yumas hamake rotzeachu. If a person hits somebody and kills him with that hit, Mos yumas, you give a good punch and the guy dies. So then, Mos yumas hamake rotzeach, we kill the puncher. We kill the guy that punched his friend. Or not friend any longer, but Mos yumas hamake rotzeachu. Ainly ela b'misak suvabo. So it sounds like we only give him the punishment that's written. Minayin shem iyata minayin im iyata yachola miso b'misa haksuvabo shata memiso b'chol misa shata yachola miso. What if you can't kill him with the punishment that is prescribed for him? No, sorry, and by a rotzeach he gets stoned. He gets stoned. So let's say you can't stone him. Why can't you? I don't know why you can't stone him. There's no cliff near you. There's no rocks near you. Whatever it is, you can't do it. How do you know that you can kill him with any of the other three? Talmud Lomar Mos Yumas. You shall surely kill him. Hamaka mikol makom. You shall surely kill him in any way that you could. Now, very fascinating discussion. We have over here that when someone is supposed to get stoned, and you cannot do that, he gets killed with one of the other three. So one's a question. Does this only apply for the rabbis that hold that skila is the most strict? Or would Rabbi Shimon agree to this? Probably not. Rabbi Shimon holds burning is more strict than skila. So if you can't give him skila, you also can't give him a more strict punishment. That's one thing. But the second thing is, does this apply by the other capital punishments? I think it's really the same question in a different way. If you can't strangle the guy, you're allowed to cut off his head? If you can't cut off his head, you're allowed to burn him? So meaning, even though you can't give a guy a more strict punishment, but is that just only when you can give him the punishment that he deserves? All we have here is that stoning, if you can't do stoning, you can give him one of the other three. But can you apply it to other places? I think that's a discussion. That's interesting. Yeah.
Say, if that's actually decapitation,
right,
or if it's more shchita. Because there was a comment about the head separating.
That's a good question. The parameters of sayif, is it just like a shchita? It says matizin as rosho. I mean, I think matizin. I think matizin sounds like you're separating.
Up
Right. Right. It sounds like matizin. I don't know, you chop off his head. Yeah. You want to know why not just do shchita if that's more humane? Is that more humane by a person? I don't know.
No, I mean, it's the same, except that normally you do shchita with an animal.
Still, it's like shaking around after. No.
I mean, it still shakes around, but it's animals feed us out. So
translation of one.
Right, axe for sure. Right. So either way, it's an interesting discussion that if you can't give skila, you give something else. Does that apply to the other three or only to skila? If it would apply to the other three, then it would be a big chiddush because it would be that you can give someone a stricter punishment when you can't give them what they deserve. And that would be a novelty. Okay. Amar le Rav Achami difti le Ravina. Okay, so now still the im b'mos yumsu gmiri. So if you, meaning before we had a question, you wanted to know, do you use the mehem bam or use b'mos yumsu? So the i b'mos yumsu gmiri. So ma'ika kashale. What was so difficult with you about that? Meaning, if you would learn out from Ova v'yedoni, the different kinds of sorcery, to every other person that got stoned through the words, the phraseology of b'mos yumsu, what was that was difficult for you? Why was that difficult for you? So, ilema ashes ish kakashale, because it says by a married man, a married woman, it says mos yumsu, and there you don't get stoned. So maybe that's why it was difficult for you to use that phraseology. So why don't you just say, lemesi v'ligmar mos yumas ma'ovi yedoni, mala holan b'skila afkan b'skila. Why don't you just learn from there to any married lady that has illicit relations, she should get killed by stoning. So that we say, no, you can't do that. Why? Mid amarachmana arusa b'skila, only a nara meurasa, a young girl who's in her first stage of marriage, only she gets stoned. Mechlal dinesua la b'skila. Therefore, a married lady, fully married lady, is not going to get stoned. So therefore, you can't apply that phraseology to her. Maybe what was difficult for you was make avi ve'imo, person who hits his parents. It also says most yumas over there, and there it's not about getting stoned. So kakasha. So why don't you learn from Ovi Adoni that really someone who hits their parents should get stoned. Ad digmir me'ovi adoni. So now the Gemara says, well, ad digmir me'ovi adoni ligmir me'ish ish. Now that you have the word most yumas by hitting your parents, you have most yumas by a lady who cheats on her husband, and you have most yumsu by Ovi Adoni. So you have Ashes ish is going to be a married lady who cheats is going to be strangulation. Ovi Adoni, sorcery, is going to be skila. If you want to know which punishment does a kid who hits his parents get, so why are you telling me he should get stoned? He should get really strangulation. Why? You're not allowed to be more machmir on him. You can't give him a stricter punishment than he really deserves. You can only give the minimum. You can't give the maximum. Good morning, Jared. Okay. So Amarle, Sharhan is skull and Gufayu Kakashale. My problem was everyone else would get stoned. How do I know that they get stoned? What's the source? The Ibamos Yumsu Gmiri. So if it's from the words Bamos Yumsu, so Ad Digmir Me'ovi Adoni, Ligmir Me'ish Ish. What was difficult was those words, most yumas. I didn't understand if you're using those words, why would you learn from Ovi Adoni, where you could just learn from Ish? So this is all just explaining what was difficult to that original question of Rabbi Zera to Abaye. Okay, fine. Now, Elu Hain Haniskalin. So now we get to find out who is the one that gets stoned. A long list of people. Strongly advised to not be part of this group. Yeah. So Elu Hain Haniskalin. So these are the following people that get stoned. So I keep thinking of your business. Yeah. Okay.
What?
So Haba'al Ha'im, one who has relations with their mother, the Al Eishes Ha'av, or their father's wife. Sounds like someone who's not their mother, like a stepmother. The Al, that's two. The Al Kala, three, is with their daughter-in-law. The Al Hazachar with another male, that's four. The Al Behema is five with an animal. The Ha'isha Hamevia es Behema, a lady who brings an animal upon herself, that's six. The Hamagadef, someone who blasphemes God, is seven. The Ovid Avodas Kachavim, idol worship, is eight. The Hanosin Mizaro Lamolech, a certain form of Avodah Zarah, where you give a child to the Avodah Zarah of Molech. I think we'll see as a whole procedure how you do that. That's eight. I think eight. Ubal Ovi Adoni, one who does either Ovi Adoni, that's nine. Hamachalas a Shabbos, one who profanes the Shabbos, desecrates Shabbos, I think that's 10. Hamakal Avimo, you curse your parents, your father, your mother. 11. Va'ba'al Na'am Marasa, one who has relations with a Na'am Marasa, a 12 to 12 and a half year old who's in her first stage of marriage. The Hamesis, one who tries to convince someone to do Avodah Zarah, to do idol worship. The Hamediach, one who convinces the whole city to do Avodah Zarah. Hamachashef, sorcery. Ben Sorer Rumore, there's a whole parak about him coming up. Or the wayward son. Okay, fine. So that's that. I think 15 cases. So Haba'al Ha'im. Now, what is that? 18 cases. Thank you. 18 cases. Okay. So next time you want to give chai to tzedakah, you think of this. Yeah. So to not be one of the 18, you give $18. Yeah. So now Haba'al Ha'im. Now no one's going to forget it. Great. So now Haba'al Ha'im. So one who has relations with their mother. Chayiv aleha mishum aim mishum eishes av. You get two punishments. You get the punishment of having a relationship with a mother and with a husband's wife. Sorry, with the father's wife. Sorry, with the father's wife. Thank you. With the father's wife. That's all the first opinion of Tanakama. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, and this is going to be a discussion for a long time now. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Eino Chayev Ela Mishuma Ein Bilvad. Rabbi Yehuda, for some reason, says you only get punished for relations with the mother and not because of your father's wife. Jared's getting excited. Okay, good.
Seems like a weird thing to say. It's like you're guilty, right?
Yeah, you get to, yeah, good. So you want to know why did you only get one, not two? Yeah.
But a mother, any mother.
Your mother. No, not any mother. Your mother.
Okay.
That I never heard of. That if you have relations with someone else, do we care if she's a mother or not?
No, like.
No, not mother-in-law. Either a mother or a stepmother. Rabbi Yehuda says if you have relations with meaning there's your mother and there's your father's wife. So if they're the same person, the first opinion says you're over two things. You're over because she's your mother, she gave birth to you, and she also happens to be your father's wife. Rabbi Yehuda, for some reason, only says you only violated one of the prohibitions in the Torah. You've only violated because she's your mother. For some reason, you haven't violated the fact that she's also your father's wife. Sounds like in the Torah. I don't know. Let's see. Yeah. So that's okay. That's one disagreement between Rabbi Yehuda. That will be the only one, I think. Yeah. Now, Haba'al Eishes Av, one who has relations with their father's wife. Chayev Mishum. Do it on the ground. That makes less noise. So Chayev Mishum Eishes Av Mishum Eishes Ish. So Haba'al Eishes Av, one who has relations with their father's wife. You're Chayev. You're obligated for what? Mishum Eishes Av, for your father's wife. That's one. Mishum Eishes Ish, and because she's a married lady. So you get those two also. Right. Now, Bein B'chaye Aviv, whether it's in your father's lifetime, bein la'achar mitzvahs aviv, even after the father dies, you're still prohibited to his wife. That doesn't change because he's not around anymore. Bein min erisin, bein min nesuin. It didn't matter if the wife was in her first or second stage of marriage. That's irrelevant. Haba al kalaso, someone who has relations with their daughter-in-law. Chayiv aleha mishum kalaso. You're chayiv because she's your daughter-in-law. Umishum esh, and she's married. She's married to your son. Bein b'chayiv beno, whether the son is still alive. Bein la'achar mitzvahs beno, doesn't matter. Bein min erisin, whether she's in her first stage of marriage or she's in her second stage of marriage, it doesn't matter. You will be obligated for both of those violations. Yeah. Okay. Says the Brisa. Tanya. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Imlo Haisa Imo, Reuya La'aviv, Eino Chayiv Ela Mishuma Aim Bilvad. So, classic cryptic statement. That what? If the lady wasn't fitting to your father, then you're only obligated because she's your mother, and not because she is your father's wife. So what does this mean that she wasn't fitting to your father? What does not fitting to your father mean? Now,
Go ahead.
let's see. So now, we know that for some relations with people, you get kares, very severe. For other relations with people, for instance, all of these cases coming up in a while is Sefer Vayikra. So you can say we have Acharemos and Kedoshim. And in one parsha it tells you that a lot of these relations you get kares. So now that's one category. Then you have like a mamzer. Mamzer, it says lo yavo b'kal Hashem. You cannot enter into the Jewish people. That or a Kohen, all right, a Kohen to a grusha, a Kohen to a divorcee. You can't marry them. That's not kares. That's just a prohibition. We call that chayve lavin, meaning you were over a negative commandment. So there's chayve kares. That's the most severe. Kares always means when you do it inadvertently. If you do it advertently, then you get death, usually capital punishment. So there's one category, chayve kares, and then there's another category called chayve lavin. It's not kares, but the Torah says you cannot be married to them. You might get lashes, yeah. So now, when the Torah says you can't be married to these people, does that mean if you try, it's so severe that even your attempted kiddushin is not going to work? It's like putting the two magnets together, but they're opposite. It's just not going to go. Or no, some things are very severe, and you did the wrong thing, and you're going to get punished for it. But at the end of the day, the kiddushin, we call it kiddushin tofes. Kiddushin grasps on. You're still technically married. So not every time it says you can't marry somebody, if you do marry them, it's not a good marriage. It is a good marriage. You did the wrong thing. So okay. So now, what does it mean not fitting to your husband? What does it mean that she's not fitting to the father? So ilema chayve krisos. If it's a relationship of chayve krisos, either the punishment is kares or the chayve misas bezdin, or a punishment which gets you capital punishment. So then, if that's what Rabbi Yehuda says that you're only chayiv one. So what do the rabbis hold? Michlal de Rabbanan Savri, Afal Gav de Eina Re'uyalo. Meaning Rabbi Yehuda's arguing on the rabbis. So he says a lady who's not fit to your father, you only get one. Sounds like the rabbis would hold, even if she's not fit, you would still get two. But if it's chayve krisos or chayve misas bezdin, capital punishment, or chayve kares, nobody holds that's going to be a good. A good marriage. Less like kiddushin begave. She was never married. If the father goes and marries somebody who is chayve kares to them, or who is chayve misas bezdin to them, that's not a marriage. Now we're going to see in the beginning of Temura coming up, whatever. I don't know, sometime next year, 2026, there's a whole 3, 5, 6 daf of Temura. At first, I tried doing Daf Yomi, I started with Temura, big mistake, and then I dropped it. So, Temura is very hard. But it says the whole thing there, do you get punished for attempting to do something in the Torah, even though it doesn't work? That's a Bava Rava, have a whole 4 or 5 daf about that over there. But here, there's no kiddushin, so she's not married to your husband. She's not married to your father, sorry. So, of course, that's not going to work. So what did it mean that Rabbi Yehuda holds it's not fitting to your father, and therefore you get punished one, but according to the rabbis, you get punished 2. Ella must be chayve lavin, prohibitions that are only prohibited with chayve lavin. For example, a mamzer, that's 1, or a widow to a kohen gadol, that's 2, or So, and whose opinion is that? That must be the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda like Rabbi Akiva. That Rabbi Yehuda holds like Rabbi Akiva, ein kedushin tovsin b'chayve lavin. Rabbi Akiva is the one who holds that chayve lavin are as strict as chayve krisus. He puts those two in the same category. Even krisus is a kares, is a yeah. So exactly the definition of kares versus heavenly punishment. So is a big machlokas. I think Rashi and Tosfos either means a person dies early. One means a person dies early. One means a person loses their kids early. Whatever. Both not good things. Yeah. So Rabbi Akiva is one who holds. Rabbi Yehuda holds like Rabbi Akiva. Therefore, he says, if you try to marry somebody who's only a negative prohibition to you, like let's say a widow to a kohen gadol or a mamzer. Mamzer just says lo yavo b'kal Hashem. The mamzer can't enter the Jewish people. It doesn't say kares. It doesn't say capital punishment. Rabbi Akiva holds though, if you try to marry a mamzer, this lady, so the father, let's say the father's a mamzer, and he goes to marry this lady who's a regular lady. So that's chayve lavin. According to Rabbi Akiva, that's as strict as chayve krisus, and therefore it's like putting two opposite magnets together. It's just not going to go. There's no marriage there. It was attempt failed. But according to the rabbis, they hold no, chayve lavin is a lower level, and therefore that attempt succeeded. Did the wrong thing, but it succeeded. Therefore, you'd be obligated too. Now, on this, the Rabbi Yehuda holds like Rabbi Akiva. We're going to bring a whole long thing now just to get to that one point to ask on him to prove that he doesn't hold like Rabbi Akiva. And that's going to be a good question. So, Masiv Rav Osher. Rav Osher has the following difficulty on this idea that Rabbi Yehuda agrees with Rabbi Akiva. So, Isser mitzvah and Isser kedusha. So, two vague categories of people that if they fall to Yibam. So, if these people, if her husband dies, and now she falls to her brother-in-law. However, her brother-in-law is an Isser mitzvah or an Isser kedusha. So we'll see what an Isser mitzvah or an Isser kedusha is in a second. What's the halacha? Choletzes velo misyabemes. You get chalitza, but you can't do yibum. You can't go through with yibum in this case. So yeah, we'll see who they are. Isser mitzvah or Isser kedusha. Turning the page. Isser mitzvah shnios midivrei sofrim. Oh, one sec. So who's an Isser mitzvah? In Isser mitzvah, someone is shnios midivrei sofrim, rabbinically prohibited to you. So let's say, I don't know, what's an example? People that the rabbis added on. So maybe great-grandparents, maybe distant cousins, people that the rabbis added on that you're not allowed to have relations with. Gosh, tell us what a good example is. What?
His maternal grandmother married his maternal grandmother married his paternal brother.
His maternal grandmother
Married his paternal brother, so his half brother, and his grandmother on the paternal side married.
Okay. So right, so that's midivrei sofrim. That's rabbinic. So since it's rabbinic, you can't go through with the yibum because the rabbi said no. But because it's rabbinic, you're still bound. She's bound to him, and therefore you have to do chalitza. Biblically, you're still bound to him. Okay. The amai karalahu isser mitzvah. Why is it called the prohibition of a commandment? What does that mean? Shem mitzvah lishmoa divrei chachamim. There is a mitzvah to listen to the rabbis. You're obligated to listen to the rabbis. Oh, where is he? He had a good question about this last week. Okay, when he comes back. Shem mitzvah lishmoa divrei chachamim. You're commanded to listen to the rabbis. What does isser kedusha mean? An isser kedusha is an almana lekohen gadol. This is a almana, a widow, to a kohen gadol, or a gerusha v'chalutza lekohen hedyot, a divorcee or a chalutza, a lady who already had chalitza once before, is lekohen hedyot. The amai karlu is her kedusha. Why are they called a prohibition of sanctity, of holiness? What does that mean? The chesiv, it says by kohanim and kohanim gedolim, kedoshim yu leilokechem. You have to be extra holy. You have to be extra holy, and therefore you have to keep your sanctity. And doing this would profane your sanctity. Now, this all to get to Rabbi Yehuda. V'tani Allah, and we taught on this. Rabbi Yehuda, machlif chilufehu. Rabbi Yehuda holds that an Isser mitzvah is really an Isser mitzvah is really an almana lekohen gadol, and an Isser kedusha is the rabbinic prohibitions. Rabbi Yehuda machlif chalufe huda machlif, but yet what do you see? Since he switched it, what do you see? That rabbinically, not rabbinically, a Kohen Gadol married to a widow or a Kohen married to a divorcee, at the end of the day, they have to get chalitza. They're still bound. Now, the rule in Yevamis is that chayve krisos, they're not bound at all. Chayve lavin, they are still bound. Now, if Rabbi Yehuda holds like Rabbi Akiva, that chayve lavin are as strict as chayve krisos, the negative prohibitions, people that you can't marry with a negative prohibition are as strict as people that you're chayiv kares to, then there should be no chalitza. You should be totally not bound to them at all. If a person falls to one of their immediate relatives somehow, the first mission Yevamos talks about that. So then there's no chalitza, no krisos, and no yibam at all. But you see, according to Rabbi Yehuda, even by a negative commandment, you still need chalitza. Rabbi Akiva. So Michti Chayve Lavan Rabbi Akiva Kechayve Krisus Dami. Rabbi Akiva compares negative prohibitions. They're as strict as Chayve Krisus, Kares. Kares literally means the cutting off of your soul. That's what it means, Kares. The Chayve Krisus Lav B'nei Chalitza V'Ibam Ninhu. But if you fall, if a lady whose husband dies, and now her Yavam, her brother-in-law, happens to be somebody who she's already prohibited to through Kares, there is no Yibam, there's no Chalitza. She doesn't fall to him. So that's a question. Rabbi Yehuda says the Gemara, you're right. Rabbi Yehuda was just saying L'dvar of the Tanakama Kamar v'lei lo svirle. Rabbi Yehuda was just saying, according to you, Tanakama, an Isser mitzvah should be like that, and an Isser kedusha should be like that. Not that he holds that a lady who's married only with a negative prohibition, that it's that he holds that there would be chalitza. He was just saying, according to you, first opinion that held that an Isser mitzvah is that category and an Isser kedusha is that category. I think that according to you, you should flip it, but not that I hold that someone who is prohibited and through a negative commandment will actually get chalitza. I don't hold of that. It's just when you're categorizing an Isser mitzvah and an Isser kedusha, I think you should flip it. Okay, we will stop here. Shomer wanted to know, a very good question. The Torah tells you to listen to the rabbis. That means that every rabbinical prohibition is really a biblical one. Now, this is a humongous discussion, the Rambam and the Ramban.